Good morning, everybody. Very warm welcome to this interdisciplinary workshop. An interdisciplinary workshop organized in a bottom-up spirit, building bridges. Building bridges to come up with new ideas, not only, let's say, for frontier science, but also addressing major issues of societal relevance in the broader context. And as former president of Academia Europaea and former chair of SAPEA, I'm very happy with the proactive role that the Budapest hub of Academia Europaea is playing in this broader context. Because we cannot have, let's say, a science and science policy advice in splendid isolation. And of course, you might have noticed from the previous talk that the advice the European Commission is asking for is all dealing with topics of interdisciplinary nature. And it's very clear in that context that we have to remove some of the walls between the different scientific fields. It's also important to realize that the European Commission is doing in this context much better than some of the member states. The European Commission, in its legislation, wants to know where the science is standing. And I have been in a very direct dialogue with the architect of SAPEA, which was the former Director General of Research and Innovation of the European Commission, honorary member of our Academy, Robert Jan Smits, in making this reality. And of course, it's an issue of pan-European nature, but it has also, of course, to mobilize know-how all over Europe. What is also important is, of course, the objectives in a broader context. And I think what we do here today and tomorrow is in a bottom-up spirit implement some of the strategic objectives of HUN-REN. Consolidate high-impact research activity, foster basically a young researcher-centered and intellectually stimulating environment, which is extremely important, especially in a country where the salaries for scientists, frankly, are on the low side. And to explore further collaboration with industry to promote knowledge transfer. And in that context, I'm very happy with the strong presence of people from industry here. That is highly needed to promote further that interaction, and this is taking place in some fields. But let's say compared to the situation in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, this can be speeded up quite a lot, I must tell you. To give you an example of the Netherlands, the Robert Jan Smits, who I just mentioned, is today the president of Eindhoven University of Technology. Eindhoven is a hotspot for high tech. It's also the site where ASML is located. This is the prime company that is building the machines that produce the chips. He has established the largest public-private partnership ever made in the Netherlands between his university and this site. And it's embedded in a highly international setting because we cannot deal with this issue just with Dutch people. And I think openness and cross-border cooperation is essential. And frankly, that's why it is very important to see the outcome of the mission that Balázs is making in Brussels. And I count on a positive outcome. If not, it will have basically serious consequences for many of us. Well, when we talk about, let's say, the national context, it's very clear that there will be a growing increase in terms of the energy demand for the future. And this has been realized by the authorities here in Hungary. It's also clear that there is a growing demand for skilled labor. And this is a major issue, especially in a country where basically we don't see a big increase in population. And where we also see that a lot of young researchers leave the country. So these are really challenges to be met. At the same time, we see also that there are opportunities. The authorities in this country have formulated, set up with a focus on basically to channel national RDI resources in 4 areas. And if you look into these 4 boxes, you see we cover them all at this meeting. Again, this needs a proactive approach. It needs also that the government is delivering what it is promising, but it also means that we cannot wait till that moment. We must be prepared. And that's in the essence. Well, in that context, I'm very happy that we have a program highlighting all these issues. And well, for day 1, just to give you a flavor of what's on the menu, and I will come back in a few minutes to day 2, which will be chaired by Kathleen. To whet your appetite, just the pictures of 4 of our speakers of today. A bright young researcher, Pietro Sternai, who just got a consolidator grant of the European Research Council, talking about service processes, environment, Earth system dynamics. Then we have Taras Giria, professor in ETH Zurich. He will talk about biogeodynamics, completely new field, cross-border, a link between what's happening inside the Earth and at the Earth surface, but also with biodiversity, so cross-cutting. Then we have Bernhard Hüttel, who basically also represents the Nantesbuch initiative in Germany, focusing on soil sciences, and he has a very strong sympathy and knowledge also about what's going on in the deeper Earth. And I think what he does in this initiative is really building bridges, and I'm very happy to be a little bit involved in this, because let's say this is also very important for the Topo Europe initiative that I will say a few words about. And then, last but not least, Bernard Novotny from OMV Vienna, also represented here by Gabor Tari, who will also be one of the speakers later on. And basically, he will bring us to the domain of geothermal energy. And for that, Vienna will be a hotspot, because there things are on the move. And it's very interesting that we see these initiatives pioneered by people from the energy industry, where we have a vast knowledge on the subsurface of the countries where they work, and that same knowledge can be utilized also to go in the renewables, and they will highlight this. And of course, this is extremely important also to basically reduce our dependence on energy resources which are not anymore that secure. And this is particularly the case, of course, in some parts of Europe. Well, day 2, also a very interesting program. And the link, of course, with the what's happening not only, let's say, on the surface of the Earth, but particularly with those who live on that. And it has been mentioned, health is very important, both physical and mentally. And that day, that will start with Tom Beer, the former president of the International Union of Geophysics and Geodesy. And he will make very interesting links between sustainability, but also on the topic of the wildfires. Well, you see here some of the speakers. Peter Heggie has been mentioned here already. Then Peter Turok from the Debrecen will be here. I mentioned just also here, of course, Tom Beer. And we will also have a distinguished speaker from Greece, speaking on the European Climate Pact. So again, the European dimension is very strongly represented also here. When we talk about research infrastructure is key. We have in Europe a beautiful scheme which is called ESFRI, European Large-Scale Scientific Research Infrastructure. And we are very fortunate to have the European Plate Observatory system in this. This is for more than 500 million euro research infrastructure to monitor what's going on the continent of Europe and its margins, not only for, let's say, purely scientific purpose, but also for geothermal, for natural hazards, for coastal instability, and so on and so forth. And surprisingly enough, Hungary is not a member. It does not cost a fortune to be a member. And we have been pushing for this already quite some time. And I'm very happy now that HUN-REN is taking this up and making sure, let's say, that we come out of the situation where we are one of the very few countries who are basically not in this. This is distributed research infrastructure. And that's very important because by being in it, you can use research facilities elsewhere, facilities you don't have. You can go for some very expensive things elsewhere. And we all know, let's say, that in some countries there is a very extensive research infrastructure and often too beautiful to keep for themselves. And I will come back to that in a few minutes. Okay, another important point is geothermal. It's on the move, but also here, surprisingly, although Hungary is the hottest spot on continental Europe, it is not, let's say, in the front line. And that has to be changed. There are initiatives, and we have come up with the idea to establish a HUN-REN National Competence Center in geothermal and renewable energy, called after Ladislav Rybak, former professor in ETH in geothermal, coming from Hungary. He was already doing geothermal long before it became, let's say, in fashion. And I think this is a fantastic name. He wrote textbooks, and I think this is a fantastic business card for the community here to have a center like that. And I count on HUN-REN to establish this legal entity very soon, in order not to miss the boat. Well, we got recently a very prestigious grant, the Research Grant Hungary, and I hope it's not a surprise for you that part of that money will go also in frontier research, basically in the context of geothermal. And I'm also very happy that this is embedded in a strong Hungarian-Dutch cooperation with the University of Twente, that is hosting the National Instrument Pool in seismology. And Mark van der Meijden is here. He will be one of the speakers. And that deployment of those instruments that have been deployed all over the globe, in Patagonia, in Baja California, in the East African Rift, and so forth, that finally we have these instruments deployed here in Hungary. And you will hear more about that later on. Well, this is all part, of course, of a pan-European initiative. And I like to mention here in particular the Topo Europe program, which is a pan-European program which was born in the Earth Sciences section of Academia Europaea, but also was born in the International Lithosphere program, which is an inter-union program connecting the International Union of Geology and Geophysics, represented here by past president Tom Beer, and the International Union of Geological Sciences. And this program is all about a connection between the deep earth and what's happening on the surface, and taking Europe, the European continent, and its margins as a natural laboratory. When I was a student, I learned that if you go a little bit deeper in the earth, below the crust, everything is the same. Well, this is not the case. If you look to these pictures here, which are depth slices till a depth of 400 kilometers, and you see these areas in blue, like here in the Carpathian area, that is the downgoing slab under the Carpathians. And here in red, you see the hot upper mantle under the Pannonian Basin. And here you see the downgoing slab in the Aegean. Here you see the downgoing plate here under the Gibraltar Arc, and also overlain by hot upper mantle. This tells us something, that we have in the deep earth the record of what happened at the surface in the past. And we can reconstruct that. And this is a fantastic frontier of science. This is a revolution within the plate tectonic revolution. Plate tectonics started in the oceans, focusing on horizontal motions. We have brought it on land with Topo Europe. We focus on vertical motions. And we treat the topography as basically the recorder of what's going on in the interplay between the deep earth and the surface. And that means also that we need a multidisciplinary approach. And we were very happy to get in the first phase of this program 23 countries in Europe in the game, putting together essentially close to 15 million euro, supplemented by major national funding. The Spanish people were very clever. They created a Topo Iberia, good in itself for 8 million, and they could justify it by saying, well, look to the average topography of Spain. It's higher than the average topography of Switzerland. Well, very clever idea. Topo Europe itself in its first phase was good for close to 15 million, and in this way we could keep 60 bright young researchers off the street. One of them is sitting here, Pietro Sternai, and I'm very happy now that he is leading with me together the Topo Europe program in its current phase. So things are here on the move, and I am also very happy that we have now stability in terms of its headquarters. Headquarters is sited in Chopron, beautiful place, located in the heart of Europe, and it's located at the Earth Physics and Space Sciences Institute in Chopron, and I'm very happy to see my partner in crime there, Istvan Kovacs, who is the managing director. And you might also notice that in the front of this picture there is Balázs Gulyás, who basically has made it a tradition to open our meetings. And you might also notice there are many young researchers. We talk about future of the science, and that means also science of the future. So altogether, I think this meeting comes at a timely moment, and I trust essentially that the outcome will lead to research proposals and new ideas on topics that have not been addressed so far. And of course, I'm extremely happy that this meeting could take place. And first of all, when I discussed this for the first time with Balázs, he immediately said, come here. I was also happy with the cooperation between basically the Budapest hub of Academia Europaea and HUN-REN, and it's really a team effort to make this happening. So also here, a big thank you to the HUN-REN staff. They really will spoil us here and take care of us. And of course, I would also like to mention here Sylvia Keuver, who plays an essential role also on the side of the Institute of Earth Physics and Space Sciences in Chopron. So, wishing you an inspiring meeting, and we will move on at 10:30 with more science. Okay, wishing you a nice coffee break.